going to talk about my reading plans for the fourth quarter of 2025. If you're new to these TBR videos, I give you 20 books that I'm pretty sure that I'll read in the fourth quarter of the year. I lay them out as 10 definites, 5 probablys, and 5 maybes, but I tend to do better than that. In the third quarter of the year, I read 19 of the 20 books I talked about on that video, so this is a pretty good overview of a lot of the things that you'll see me talking about on the channel in the next 3 months. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about the definites, starting with the first book that I plan on reading in October. This is the conclusion to a book series. The book series is The Locke Institute. The author is A.R. Witham, and the book is The Execution of Rooker Flynn. So this is the third in the trilogy, The Locke Institute, and I was an alpha reader for this last year, so I know the story, but I'm really excited to see the final product of this last book. Not only because I'm invested in the story, but when I read this last year, the third book was by far my favorite of the three. I thought that he stuck the landing, and it was a nice emotional finish for the series. So I'm looking forward to reading that as my first read of the quarter. Now, the rest of these books, they're not going kind of in the order, but the first few are some things that I do have planned in October. Starting with the Fireside Book Club read, we are reading The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a classic science fiction story. I've read one other work of science fiction by Le Guin. I read Left Hand of Darkness about 10 years ago. Didn't love it, but I wasn't reading a lot of sci-fi at the time, so I'll go in open-minded with The Lathe of Heaven. I did love Le Guin's Earthsea cycle, the 5 books and the book of short stories that are classic fantasy. I really like her writing style, and I'm very glad that we decided to read this for the Fireside Book Club. So if you don't know what the Fireside Book Club is, we started this last quarter. We will be reading a book every quarter together. That's me and Evie and Matt and Joanna, and then we'll get together on one of our channels and do a live stream. So even though this is coming out a couple weeks before most of us will read the book, if you want to jump in, you can certainly join us in the live stream and talk about The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. Another book series that I'll be finishing this quarter is a book series that will also be published this quarter and will be the big finale of The Sun Eater by Christopher Ruocchio. Last October, I started reading the books in The Sun Eater, and I read something every month, either one of the main novels, one of the novellas, or one of the short fiction collections. Well, I only have 2 things left, so it's the end of a big, long journey that'll be over a year by the time that I finish. What I have left is the final collection of short fiction. This is Tales of the Sun Eater, Volume 4, so I'll be reading that first, and then it's released at the end of November. That is the final book in the Sun Eater. It's called Shadows Upon Time. Really excited to see the end of this journey, especially because the 6th book was actually my favorite in the series, so I like where we're going with the end of this story, and I'm just excited to be at the end of this when the book comes out at the end of November. Another big thing that I'll be continuing this quarter is Malazan Book of the Fallen. But in addition to that, I'm reading a book from the novels of the Malazan Empire by Ian C. Esselmont. I have not read him before, but I'll be reading Knight of Knives in early November. So Knight of Knives is a book that was recommended to me by all the people that are big Malazan fans. They say that it will really enhance my enjoyment of The Bone Hunters, which I'm reading at the end of November, the 6th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. So I'm really excited to read both of these as I get back into reading Malazan, and I have it sketched out. The end is kind of in sight, not anytime soon, but I do have it sketched out and have a good idea of when I'll be finally finishing the first 10 books of this big Malazan journey. But the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 6, The Bone Hunters, definitely one of my most anticipated reads of the fourth quarter of the year. So a book series conclusion of sorts. I'm finally going to read. I'm only 11 or 12 months late on this one. I'm going to read Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I say book series conclusion of sorts because his Stormlight archive is supposed to be 10 books, but he's saying that it's a 5-book arc and then another 5-book arc, and this is book 5. I'm really interested in reading this because I've seen people say that it is Sanderson's best book, and I've seen people say that they're done with Sanderson after this book. I have no idea where I'm going to lay with this. Sanderson has been a favorite author of mine. I do feel that in many ways his earlier works are stronger than his later works, but I did really enjoy a couple of the what are they called? These things here. The secret projects. I did enjoy the 2 of those that I read this year, so I am excited to finish the first arc of Stormlight Archive, and we'll see where I land, whether I think it's the best thing since sliced bread or whether I might be parting ways with this author. I hope it's more of the former and less of the latter. I'll be doing a reread this quarter of Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub. I read The Talisman last month as a reread, and King's putting out a third book in this series, so this is one of the big reasons that I wanted to reread these two books before that third Talisman book came out. But also, these are tangentially related to The Dark Tower, and I wanted to do a just very gradual, I mean, this has taken like 4 or 5 years. I've just been very gradually sprinkling in a lot of the Stephen King books that tie into The Dark Tower, which are not part of the series. I wanted to reread all of those before I do a reread of The Dark Tower. So maybe 2027, that might be in the cards. But I am looking forward to Black House. Even though I didn't love The Talisman, there's enough in there that I do have hopes that Black House will maybe be a little bit better than that one. But it'll at least get me excited to see King's next book in that series that's supposed to come out sometime in 2026. So a book series that I'm going to start is the Hybrid Helix series by J.C.M. Byrne, and the first book is called Wistful Ascending, and the author sent this to me a long time ago, earlier this year. We were on a live together, I don't even remember where it was, and enjoyed talking with each other, and he said, "Hey, can I send you my book? No strings attached to read it." And I said, sure. He sent it to me. Well, I've been hearing Brian at BellTube just rave about this series, and he has me really excited because Brian and I, our tastes align in a lot of things. I think like both of us have Realm of the Elderlings as our favorite series. We have a Stephen King connection. I mean, a lot of the things that we enjoy, we both enjoy, and he loves this series, so I'm excited to finally start the Hybrid Helix series by J.C.M. Byrne with the first book, Wistful Ascending. So the final book in this definite category of this TBR video is The Proving Ground by Michael Connelly. Connelly comes out with a book, I read the book. Connelly's Mr. Consistent in crime fiction, and this is a Lincoln Lawyer novel. Kind of. This Lincoln Lawyer novel also has Jack McAvoy. McAvoy has been 3 of Connelly's books, including my favorite of his, The Poet. And I would say pound for pound, the McAvoy books are probably the strongest of anything within Connelly's work. So I'm very excited to see McAvoy find himself into a Lincoln Lawyer novel. Because admittedly, even though they're very good, legal thrillers are not my thing. So I don't prefer the Lincoln Lawyer novels compared to everything else. I love the Bosch books and the Ballard books and the McAvoy books a lot more than the Lincoln Lawyer novels. So we'll see how this adds to the series, having McAvoy part of a Lincoln Lawyer novel. All right, on to the probablys, starting with the current audiobook that I'm listening to. Now, it's more of a definite because I am listening to a lot more audiobooks than I have ever before. I started doing walks in the morning and just like 3 miles around the neighborhood, just pop in an audiobook and I get almost an hour listening in. So this is more of a definite, but it's in the probably category, and that is the latest in the Dresden Files. It's called Peace Talks. Yes, I'm all the way up to 16. I've really started devouring these once I hit changes because they've just been so good. So that's a very, very strong possibility of finishing this quarter, if not next week. I also am reading a short fiction collection in the Dresden Files. This will take a little bit longer. If you're new to the channel or new to these TBR videos, I do short fiction between main novels. So I finish a book and I'll generally read 1 or 2 short stories before picking up the next book. So my current short story collection is Side Jobs by Jim Butcher. This is short fiction within the Dresden Files series. Some of them are not first-person narrative like all of the books, so that's kind of nice to have just kind of a different perspective on some of the people within the Dresden Files, but that one will probably happen sometime later in the quarter. I have been slow to return to The History of Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien, so I'm going to fix that and read The Return of the Shadow in the 4th quarter of the year. The Return of the Shadow is finally the History of Middle-earth getting up to kind of Lord of the Rings era. So I'm looking forward to reading this. A lot of the things that were thrown into the Lord of the Rings, so I'll be reading that sometime this quarter. Something I wanted to read this year in December is pick up an extra Dickens novel this year. You see my Dickens collection up here. I read a Dickens every summer, but One of the collections that I have is A Christmas Carol and Other Novels, and I want to read this in December. I have read The Christmas Carol, so that will technically be a reread, but the other novels in there are I think 4 or 5 of them in there, are very short novels, more like novellas, but I haven't read those before, so it'll be nice to read some Dickens at a different time of the year than just picking up something in the summer, and of course, A Christmas Carol, perfect to read in December. Another thing that I've been slow to get back to, which is probably in this fourth quarter, is Discworld. I read my first Discworld novel. It was back in December of last year. So I'm going to finally get back to Discworld, and I'm going to be reading Small Gods. I want to continue the City Watch series, but I already own Small Gods, so I'll be reading this one next, and I look forward to getting back to Discworld. One book in, I was just hooked, so I can't wait to continue more in that series. Now, on to the 5 maybes. The first maybe would be the next Dresden File book, which I have on audio already, and that is Battleground, which will get me caught up. And the 18th book, I think, in the series, 19th book, is out in January. So I'll be caught up when that comes out. I'll get to experience with everybody new, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'll be reading Battleground sometime this quarter. After I finish Side Jobs by Jim Butcher, my next short story collection, this is more of a probably not than a maybe, and that is Nightmares and Dreamscapes by Stephen King, and you can see that up here. It is a big chunker, and there are about 30 stories there, and if I read 1 or 2 of those between books, it's still going to take a couple months for me to read that, so this may be something that you see me talk about on my first quarter TBR as something more definitive in finishing. I'm saying maybe, but it's more of a probably not, because this one will probably take me to the end of the year. Now, there's a book I'm putting on the maybe, and I believe I've had this book on 3 of the 4 videos this year, but maybe I'll put it in the thumbnail to give myself more accountability, but I really, really want to read House of Open Wounds by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the second book in the Tyrant Philosopher series. I loved The City of Last Chances, and this has been on my physical TBR for far too long. So I really hope that this is more than a maybe, and I do read it in the fourth quarter of the year. 2 more maybes that are things that will continue book series for me is the latest in the Draenei Saga by David Gemmell. It's called Winter Warriors. It's a true standalone within the Draenei Saga. There's no Druss, there's no Waylander, there's none of the recurring characters, so that'll be one that I hopefully read this quarter. And then the last on the maybe list is that I hope to get back to the Gentleman Bastard series, which I started in January. I've only read 1 book, but I do want to read Red Seas Under Red Skies. We'll see if I can get to that in the fourth quarter. This is a lot of books. It's a busy time of year for my work as well, so we'll just see how it goes. So hey, that's a list of 20 books that I'm pretty sure that I'll read in the fourth quarter of the year. If you read any of these, I'd love to talk to you spoiler-free about them in the comments section below, and I'd also love to hear what you're most anticipating, most looking forward to reading in the fourth quarter of the year. Is it the end of the journey of Sun Eater, or is it something else? I'd love to talk with you in the comments section below. If you'd like this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Twitter, Goodreads, and the Fireside Discord. I'd love to interact with you there. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.